afternoon, everyone. As I said, I'm Geoffrey Bertram. I'm chair of the Barns-Graham Charitable Trust, and it's one of the privileges of being involved with the trust that I get to organise all the exhibitions of Wilhelmina Barns-Graham's life and work. On behalf of the trust, I would like to welcome all of you to this wonderful exhibition of her drawings. It's good to see so many of you here. Willie, as she was known to her friends, would have enjoyed such a welcoming audience. The Burton Art Gallery is the fourth venue in the life of this touring exhibition. In 2008, the Barns-Graham Trust was approached by the Peer Art Centre in Stromness in Orkney, who wanted to commission an exhibition of Willie's work. We agreed that it should be on a theme of her drawings, which had not been exhibited to any great extent previously. My mind immediately turned to Mel Gooding, the highly regarded writer on art, who had expressed to me a great enthusiasm for the drawings after seeing the two Tates and Ives exhibition, An Enduring Image in 1999 and Movement and Light Imagining Time in 2005. Mel had stated that he would like to explore this part of Willie's art, and so the two elements, the venue and the curator, harmoniously seen together. That Mel is a great fan of and knows well the Peer Art Centre was a happy coincidence. The exhibition is structured and laid out as it was at the Pier, whose temporary exhibit galleries are a cluster of 4 modestly scaled rooms. Each room had its own theme: Lanzarote, rocks, ice, trees, landscape and places, and sea waves and currents. We accepted, though, that this did not mean that a drawing in one section could not sit within another. For instance, the lava drawings in Lanzarote would be equally appropriate for rocks, ice, trees, as could the Tuscany clay workings from landscapes and places. Willie referred to her work as a draftsman as just drawings. In Mel's excellent catalogue essay, he says, "By this apparently diffident reference to one of the most brilliantly distinctive bodies of graphic work in 20th century British art, she meant that her drawings, for the most part, were not regarded by her to be an aspect of her primary artistic practice, which was in painting and printmaking, but somehow secondary to it, not so much an end in themselves as a means to the discovery of a kind of information which, assimilated, could be used later in her continuing creative project. She regarded them as exercises, at once perceptual and conceptual, a discipline of the mind, that might nourish and inform the visual imagination. And then," she said, "I turn my back on them. I don't work directly from them afterwards. They're drawings, studies, straightforward. I seldom work from my drawings," she wrote. "The discipline used releases me in my paintings to work more freely, expand with ideas and imagination involving joy in colour, texture and harmony, to start creating." Mel continues, "It is an unusually rigorous separation of functions implied here, between the close and empathetic attention paid to actualities in drawing, often working in the field, directly from the motif, and the joyful freedom of imaginative invention in the painting studio and print workshop. It takes us to the heart of her creativity, hinting at its inner dynamic at once phenomenological and intellectual, experiential and experimental." She said, "I consider it important to make studies." Her use of the term here refers to repeated treatments of a particular motif, to develop one's awareness to inner perception, collecting shapes that become my shapes, to see later what is useful, but now with increased understanding of the importance to be in union with nature, to identify with its rhythm so that, again, later I can express myself in my own language. Willie's discipline underlies her art. She saw herself as being part of the natural world, and her art expresses her involvement within it. Her reputation has been built on images that are perceived as being wholly abstract, but in fact the genesis of much of her imagery was in her awareness and study of the landscapes and their constituent parts in which she lived and visited. Willie was one of the only a few of the St Ives group who had received a full formal art training. Her background at Edinburgh College of Art had a considerable influence on her development as an artist, where drawing was considered the rock on which all else existed. This experience at Edinburgh College of Art and the influence of Scotland as a whole forms the basis of the exhibition Wilhelmina Barns-Graham, a Scottish artist in St Ives, currently on show at the Fleming Collection Gallery in London until 5th of April. And if you miss it there, you can see it later in the year at the City Arts Centre in Edinburgh from the 24th of November. It was at the encouragement of Hubert Wellington, the principal of the college, that Willie moved to St Ives in 1940. Inasmuch as we can say that the rest is history, it is worth noting that Willie's career had its ups and downs, with highlights between 1949 and 1958, and again between 1994 and her death in January 2004. Throughout her professional life, Willie's work was exhibited regularly and sold steadily, and yet her reputation did not rise to the extent of that of many of her peers. This may have been in part due to the perceived bias against women artists among the St Ives group at that time, which was reflected also in the wider art world, but also due to Willie's own prickly nature. She was prone to upsetting galleries who worked with her. Not being paid promptly for sales was one bugbear of hers. And for many of you artists in the audience today, I'm sure you recognise this situation. Plus ça change. Willie's late work certainly brought her back into the limelight, and is a significant contribution to late 20th century British abstract painting. The exhibitions which took place at Art First Gallery in London between 1995 and 2004 highlighted a considerable outpouring of paintings, mainly acrylic on paper, with which she hit her full stride as a colourist, in images in which colour, form and movement come together in her greatest and most joyous works. These were admired as much by her artist peers, John Hoyland and Bert Irvin for example, as by collectors and critics. One must acknowledge too the considerable body of prints she made following her introduction to Grail Press in 1998, with whom she made 66 screen prints and a series of etchings. Carol Robertson of Grail Press opened up new possibilities to Willie through the use of water-based screen print inks in her printmaking, and in getting Willie to make each individual mark on a separate sheet of acetate which could be used and reused in creating series of linked images. The collaboration between the elderly artist and the much younger technician was extraordinarily successful, and these prints are, in their playful and joyous manner, an important part of the artist's late output. As is readily evident in this exhibition, Willie liked to travel. The first crucial journey, in that it was the first to seriously impact on her work, was to Switzerland's Grindelwald Glacier in 1949. Her studies and paintings based on the exploration of exterior and interior forms in the glacier, examples here in the rock ice trees section over there, caught the eye of many of the country's leading and influential art curators and writers such as Herbert Reed. This was followed by several trips to the continent. In 1950, she travelled to Venice for the opening of Barbara Hepworth's Biennale exhibition, and to the Scilly Hours with Ben Nicholson in the same year. As an aside, on the divisive question of the artistic relationship between Willie and Nicholson, it's commonly considered that Ben had a significant influence on Willie. People cite the drawings made over pre-stained areas of the paper which is found in the work of both artists. However, in comparing dates more closely, it's clear that Willie was doing this first. As so often happens, it's always assumed that the major figure is the dominant force of influence. And in a separate argument on directly comparing their drawings, it's evident that they approach the act of drawing from disparate perspectives and with contrasting attitudes. In this regard, to quote Mel Gooding again, in contrast to the self-conscious aesthetic elegance of Ben Nicholson's landscape and architectural drawings, to which they, Willie's drawings, are often compared, usually with the false implication that they are entirely derivative in style from them, they, Willie's drawings, exhibit a direct toughness of perception and a determined fidelity to the disruptive imperfections of the actual. Essentially, Willie's interest was in revealing the deep construction and forces of the landscape and not the superficial surface appearances. 1953 saw Willie in Paris with studio visits to Giacometti and Jean Arc. In 1954, she travelled to Italy to attend Ben Nicholson's Venice Biennale show before staying around Tuscany and Siena. Drawings from Tuscany in particular reveal her analytical study of things observable above ground as well as those invisible beneath. In addition, echoing her views of St. Ives, the San Gimignano drawings reveal her ongoing interest in the play of architectural forms seen in the relationship described between the towers and adjacent buildings. 1955 saw her back in Italy to work under the terms of an Italian government international scholarship awarded by the British Council, with time spent in Rome and around Palermo and Sicily. On this same trip, she visited Paris to attend Nicholson's exhibition at the Musée National d'Art Moderne, also taking the opportunity to visit the studios of Poliakoff and Brancusi. In 1958, Willie visited Spain for the first time, staying in Barcelona before going on to the Balearic Isles, and there are drawings from each of these journeys included within this exhibition. After 1958, there's a gap in which Willie appears to have travelled less and done fewer drawings. With the occasional exception, the next significant group is the diminutive explorations of energies of land and sea that makes up the final section of this exhibition. Done mainly between 1975 and 1985, though she made further studies around 1990. These drawings are distinctly characteristic to her and illustrate Willie delving further into the structures and rhythms of land and sea, first initiated in the studies of the glacier and clay workings of 35 to 40 years before. The decade 1985 to 95 saw the last significant series of drawings resulting from several trips to Orkney and to Lanzarote. Lanzarote, where evidence of the force of nature is clearly visible with wide areas of recently deposited lava flow, made a strong impact on them. Here is a place in which the usually hidden underlying morphogenesis of the landscape is exposed. It was around this same time, in 1987, that Willie established the Barns-Graham Charitable Trust. Set up to protect her work and legacy, the trust came to be fully activated upon her death and is based in her St Andrews home, Balmungo House. The trust's aims include the advancement of the knowledge of her life and work through exhibitions, research and publications. Recently, this has meant creating a programme of exhibitions around the UK to celebrate Willie's centenary, which is taking place this year, of which this exhibition is one part, and to assist in enabling the newly released Lunt Humphreys publication of the second edition of Lynn Green's monograph, W. Barns-Graham, A Studio Life. This edition has been updated and expanded to cover the years between its first publication in 2001 and Willie's death 3 years later. Secondly, the Trust supports art and art history students in selected colleges and universities around the UK, providing grants, bursaries and scholarships. Willie herself benefited from such support when at Edinburgh College of Art, and this is one very specific bequest that she stipulated as part of her legacy. Nearly 100 students have benefited from the Trust in the 6 years since the programme started. The Trust expects each college and university to be responsible for identifying the appropriate candidate. This is one of the Trust's activities which has been particularly successful, and, with funds permitting, is the one which I hope the Trust can expand in the future. In addition, the Trust has initiated a programme of residencies at Balmungo House. Residencies are offered to artists and writers who are looking for a quiet sanctuary in which to develop new ideas and works. The artist gets to use Willie's old studio. In all instances, we rely on the Royal Scottish Academy to choose artists, and then on the Department of English at St Andrews University for the writers. However, we are actively seeking new partners in order to be able to offer exchanges with other organisations who manage similar programmes. Balmungo House is not open currently on a daily basis, but can be visited by appointment. We welcome anyone who has an interest in Willie's life and work. The Trust looks after a comprehensive collection of Willie's art and archive, which is available for study. Please note, though, that specific requests take some time to sort and locate, and in these cases advance notice is required. We aim in the future to hold open days at selected times in the year in which themed displays of Willie's art will be on show. The Trust is managed by 9 trustees, including myself. Details of the Trust and its activities, as well as information about Willie and her work, can be found on the website at barnsgrahamtrust.org.uk. There's also a new printed brochure, copies of which I have here for anyone who's interested to have one. Brochure. Finally, I'd like to express my thanks to Tilly, Warren and the team at the Burton Art Gallery in hosting this exhibition. You've done a great job with the installation and in getting good publicity, and I'm sure that the exhibition will be well attended. Willie's work is known to draw enthusiastic crowds, and long may that continue in the next 100 years.